Hi, my name is Maxine and today I'm going to be showing you the easiest way that I know how to make a granny square. Let's go. The materials you'll need to make a granny square are all right here. You just need a crochet hook. For this video I'm going to be using a 5.0 millimeter, a tapestry needle to weave in your ends, and a pair of scissors to snip off your yarn as you go. To start, I'm going to make a slip knot. I'm going to leave a generous tail end, wrap it around my finger like so, pull up, tighten, put that end on my needle, and tighten up the knot. Make sure that your tail is facing towards you and the working yarn is behind. To make my first inner square, I'm going to chain 6. So you can see I have 6 loops here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'm going to take this stitch and place it into the top loop of the first stitch, pull a loop through, and finish a single crochet. What I just did here is make an inner circle. This is the inner circle that we're going to be crocheting in to make the center of the granny square. To start, I'm going to chain 1, and then I'm going to double crochet right into the center of that circle. I'm going to do this one more time because my goal for this middle circle is to make sets of 2 double crochets. I now have 2 double crochets here plus our initial chain. To make our first corner, I'm going to chain 2 and then double crochet back into the center of the circle. I now have another set of 2 double crochets. I'm going to chain 2 and continue to double crochet into the middle of the circle. That's our third set of 2 double crochets. I'm going to chain 2. You see this loose end here? I'm just going to be wrapping it under here so that I can secure it with the next double crochet that I do into the middle of the circle. After our last set of double crochets, I'm going to chain 2 to make the last corner. And then I'm going to find that first chain that we did. I'm going to find the second stitch on that chain. And then what I'm going to do here is I'm going to slip stitch into that chain to finish off. If you see here, we have 3 sets of 2 double crochets plus our initial starting chain plus 4 corners. These are the 4 corners that we're going to use to continue building out our granny square. From this point, it's time to insert new yarn to change color. Of course, if you just want to make a single color granny square, you can keep going, but for the purposes of this video, I'm going to be showing you how to insert new yarn. My favorite way to insert new yarn at this stage of a granny square is just to insert it like a chain. I have this pink yarn here that I'm going to be using for the next section of the granny square. I have the tail end here in my hand, and I'm just going to fold it a couple inches down the yarn. And I'm gonna just hold it on my hook like so. I'm gonna pretend that this new pink yarn is the working yarn that I was just using from the last square. I'm gonna be holding the old working yarn just down behind that first layer of the granny square to keep it secure while I pull the new yarn through. I'm gonna tension this new yarn while I pull it through this loop. And then I'm gonna pull back on the old working yarn to tighten that initial loop. Hold this secure while you touch your new working yarn and continue double crocheting to grow your granny square. I'm going to be going from here directly into this corner. To do so, I'm going to double crochet, and I'm going to do one more double crochet to continue building out the second layer of the granny square in the sets of 2 that we started with. At this point, I'm going to be making a corner, so I'm going to continue to chain 2. And then I'm going to do 2 more double crochets into that exact same corner. As you can see here, I was kind of holding the end of my new working yarn. You can just let that go at this point if you would like to weave your ends in at the end. However, if you'd like to weave your ends in as you go, you can continue to hold this end behind the first layer of your square as you go along and crochet around it. For the purposes of this video, I'm just going to let that end go at this time so that I can show you how to weave in your ends at the end. To jump from here to the next corner, I'm not going to chain, I'm just going to straight double crochet into that next corner. To make a new corner, I'll chain 2 and do 2 more double crochets. To go into the next corner, I'm going to double crochet directly into that gap. Do 1 more double crochet. Chain 2. And make our next corner by double crocheting again into the same gap. To make our last corner, I will double crochet directly into that next gap. Do another double crochet. Chain 2 to make our next corner. And do 2 more double crochets to finish off that final corner. To finish off this layer, we're going to work similarly to how we did in the first layer. I'm going to find that initial chain, and then I'm going to slip stitch directly into that chain, like so. At this point, I'm going to cut the first working yarn and leave a very generous tail so that I can weave in the end. For my third layer, I'm going to be using this purple color, and I'm going to do the same thing that I did for the middle layer to join new yarn. Leaving a generous tail, I'm going to fold, get that new yarn around the hook, and secure my previous working yarn. Tensioning that new yarn as if it was the old yarn, I'm going to pull it through to make a chain, and then tighten off the loop of the old yarn to secure it. From here, I'm going to tension my yarn, and then continue crocheting. Just like I did in the previous 2 layers, I'm going to continue doing 2 sets of double crochets in each spot. To make our first corner, I'm going to chain 2 and then continue double crocheting into this corner. Next, we're coming up to a middle gap here. To work this space, you're going to crochet directly into that gap. You're not going to be making any chains or anything like that. You're just going to be double crocheting from this spot into this spot. So double crochet directly into that gap. Same thing as we do in the corners, we're going to be doing 2 sets of double crochets in each middle gap. And then continuing on to the next corner. Double crocheting directly into that spot. I'm going to chain 2 to make a corner. And then continue double crocheting. Coming into another gap, I'm going to double crochet directly into that gap. Moving on from that middle gap to our next corner, double crocheting directly into that corner. I'm going to chain 2 to make a corner, and then I'm going to do 2 more sets of double crochets. Coming into a gap once more, double crochet directly into that gap. And from here, continuing on to build our next corner. Doing 2 double crochets, chaining 2, and continuing. We have our last gap coming up in the middle here. As previously, we are going to double crochet directly into that gap. And finally, we are going to be closing off this layer of the granny square by doing the same thing that we did before, finding that chain where we inserted our yarn, inserting our hook, doing a slip stitch, and pulling the yarn through. At this point, I'm going to snip off our old working yarns, leaving a generous tail so I can weave them in. And to finish off, I'm just going to pull through that last tail of yarn and give it a good tug to keep it tight. And that's pretty much it. That is a very basic granny square. To finish off, I'm going to weave in all of the ends. I personally found when I was just starting out, it was a lot easier for me to leave the ends at the end. Even if it was more time consuming, it helps me get a hang on how to make the granny square itself. I usually start up at the top. Once I have the top tail on my hook, I'm going to pull it over to the other side of that loop and insert it through one of the top stitches of the top layer. I'm going to pull this nice and tight. This little loop here is going to help close off the granny square. Coming back, my yarn is on the back here, and I'm just going to pick a spot where I could weave in that end. So I'm going to go back through the front, and just poke it through there. And then going through these loops down here. Once that end is situated, you can snip it off and continue weaving in the rest of your ends. To continue weaving in your ends at the back, all you have to do is take those last few strands and find a nice snug place to hide them behind your work. Make sure that you weave in all of your ends so that you can secure your work as best as possible. Now that you know how to make this basic granny square, there are tons of different ways that you can make other granny squares in the future. However, if you are a new crocheter, I definitely recommend getting this basic pattern down, getting used to the idea of adding new yarn and joining things together, and then moving on to more complex stitches to make more interesting designs. However, this very basic style of granny square will work for any projects that you're doing. And in my opinion, mastering granny squares is one of the most useful things that you can get done early because you can use them in virtually any project that you make in the future. I hope this video gave you a great foundation to start making granny squares. If you are thinking of working on any projects in the future using granny squares, let me know in the comments below what you might be working on. Also, let me know in the comments if you did find this tutorial useful and would like to see any other tutorials in the future. If you did make it to the end of this video, please don't forget to give it a thumbs up, as well as subscribe to my channel to support my work in the future. I am a newer creator looking to post videos regularly, so if you do choose to stick around, I would love to have you. Thanks so much, take care,